We are back with a one-shot movie stop podcast. I am your host, Tommy Rinaldi. As always, I am joined by Xavier Warner, and it feels so good to be back. In this edition, we ended one trilogy just to swing back into another one, and this week's movie is Rise of the Planet of the Apes. This movie was directed by Ruppert Wyatt, was produced by 20th Century Fox. Something different that I didn't mention in the last series was the director of photography. That was Andrew Lesnie, who was part of the Lord of the Rings franchise. And then the visual effects, very pertinent in this series, and that was done by Weta, who also did Avatar and Lord of the Rings. First, X, how you doing today?
Good, man. Tired. Had to work all day. Finally got back home, and I was like, "Yo, let's get right to it. Don't wait." Because if I would have had time to relax, I don't know if we would have get this episode done. So we had to get right to it. So that's why I'm still on my baseball stuff. But happy to be back, Tommy. Let's talk this movie. Let's talk about it.
A man that works hard, and just to get you right into it, let's hear your short synopsis of this movie.
All right, synopsis. Forgot I was doing this, so let's do it. Ape scientists, they're testing things on apes. They're testing different medicines, different healing factors they can use for human beings. The initial test goes pretty well. The ape that they tested eventually dies from he almost escaped. Had a baby. The baby carried on the ALZ-12, which was the drug they wanted to use. The baby had increased intelligence. James Franco took care of him, built him up. You get like a Lion King scene where he's kind of growing up, seeing what he can do. He starts understanding the world. They want to bring the testing back after James Franco tries it on his dad, and it works pretty well. So, they were like, oh, let's bring it back. Let's do it again. It obviously doesn't end the right way. It never does in these type of movies. So then Caesar gets taken to a jail, I would say, a stay away from home camp where it's torture pretty much, where it's not actually fun and you leave and your parents leave and you're like, why'd you guys leave me here for a week? It was terrible. Like, you don't know until you're left. Eventually, his intelligence picks up more and more and more, starts to convince the other apes that he's going to be the alpha. He's going to be the lead. Like, he's the one that's going to have the plan because he has increased intelligence. They start getting behind him. They escape. They go out to the real world, start causing havoc, and they get to live freely amongst themselves for now. At least that's how the movie ends. We'll figure out more as we get these movies. We've already seen it, but as these movies go on, you'll figure out more. And that's pretty much it. I didn't want to – so just so you guys know, I started the synopsis. This is all edited, by the way. I started the synopsis, and I was going in-depth. I was probably 10 minutes in, and I was talking about the same first scene. So we had to make it a little bit longer. So that's why this was kind of very vague. So we'll talk about it more as the episode goes on.
It's just X showing his passion, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Movie was
we get to see their rise, hence the title of the movie. And we also see the rise of, in my opinion, a star in Andy Serkis. I mean, we've seen him in other things, kind of do motion capture or performance capture in other things like as Gollum in Lord of the Rings. But this is really where he comes out and shows that he's not just this performer behind the scenes and everything like that. He's really at the forefront of amazing acting, and he really outdoes everybody within this movie. And to go more off of that, we'll go into the cast of this movie. First build is James Franco as Will. He is the main scientist that X was talking about in the synopsis. He's the one that takes care of Caesar and makes sure that this drug is being handled properly. He does everything in a great way. He's trying to take everything away from the corporations that are withholding everything. I think James Franco does a really good job with this movie. He's subtle enough. You believe that he really loves Caesar. You believe that he really wants to take care of his dad. You believe when he's at a loss of his dad, of Caesar, of all these different things coming at him at once. And again, James Franco, a very solid lead within this movie. Like I said, Andy Serkis as Caesar. He does this as performance capture. So he's on set doing this with all the other actors, but he has a suit on. He learned 8 mannerisms, how to walk, how to move their mouth like they did. And if you watch the behind the scenes, you really see how much emotion he puts into this movie, and it's amazing.
Takes a lot of work, man. I give him credit for that because that's. I think you have to be more skilled at the actual act of acting to do those type of things than just being on set as yourself.
Yeah, he's living this role. It's not just a person acting as an ape. you believe it's a real ape, and it's unbelievable.
We talk about that with Nolan's Batman trilogy. It's believability. We believe that there's a disconnect between Bruce Wayne and the world, right? We believe that he's truly like trying to claw his way back in society and do those things and help save Gotham. We believe that he loves Gotham. We believe, you know what I'm saying? Just by the things he does, we know that he loves Gotham. We know he would do anything for Gotham. James Franco, we believe that he cares about Caesar. No matter what happens, no matter where he leaves him, no matter what we know he's always going to come back. And that's like, it's a big driving force in watching movies, at least for me. I can't speak for Tommy, but I assume it's the same. But believability is huge.
Of course. And to continue further with the cast, we have John Lithgow, who plays Charles, Will's father, James Franco's father within the movie. He has Alzheimer's. He is struggling with dementia. He is struggling with his mental capacity, which is something we're going to talk about later on in our discussion. But he's also the test dummy for this drug. He's also the heartstring that James Franco has. It's a really nice parallel between him and Caesar. Their interactions together are also very sweet. Their family is really one of love, and there's really no ill will in any way. And that's something we could speak to later with the interactions between the three of these people. Going further, we have the character of Caroline, who is the doctor that James Franco's character ends up falling in love with. That's played by Frida Pinto. She does a very good job. She's more of a secondary character that kind of just brings some more science into it because she's a doctor, making sure Caesar is healthy and everything along those lines. And I think she does a really nice job. And the somewhat villain of this movie is played by David Oyelowo. He plays Stephen Jacobs, who is the head of this drug corporation. So he focuses on mainly the business aspect and the money aspect of everything. And just as in all these movies that have to deal with scientists, there's always that lead person funding the project to kind of blow everything up in the end. And that's really driving force for a lot of the apes within this movie, with Caesar and Koba, as we learn later on. He's the one keeping them imprisoned. He's the one that's just putting them into these internment camps for the apes later on in the movie. Overall, I think this cast is actually very solid. They each play their role as they need to, with the star really being, in my opinion, Andy Serkis. What do you think about the cast?
Yeah, I like the cast as well, and I agree. They all played their roles pretty well. Caroline was there just to kind of move the plot forward, like you said, on a scientific level, not necessarily adding any dimension to, plot building or relationship building. She's kind of like, her and Will's relationship isn't really that important in this movie. Like, we don't really there's no undeniable feat that we need their relationship for. But being able to have her there as an extra doctor, being able to provide insight on different things and kind of question sometimes what James Franco's doing, like, sign language, like just kind of getting different things out to the general public, to us, is huge. But Caesar's the star, and you could see the trajectory from the movie. He wasn't even in the first 5 minutes of the movie, whatever, first scene, whatever you want to say. And then you slowly start seeing his character take over. And then you'll see that moving into the other movies, he's going to be a huge piece in the other movies. So him taking over in this movie and slowly okay, I'm bigger. Now I'm like the guy at the end. That's what you want to see out of a movie and with the cast. And like you said, Andy Serkis kind of stole the show.
Yeah, and something that we'll see going into the future of the movies is, like you said, Caesar is the main focus. He has his own arc within this movie, but his arc spans throughout the three movies, and we don't even see any of these other characters again. That's because this is Caesar's story, even though we kind of follow James Franco through a majority of this movie. That's it for the cast. So let's go into our overall thoughts of this movie. We've been raving about it so far, but let's hear a little bit more in detail. X, what do you think about this movie?
Man, listen, watching it, I usually, so when we're doing Batman Begins and all, I usually play Madden or something while I'm watching it. I'm watching it because I've seen those movies so many times. So I can kind of play the game for a little bit and then lock in for scenes that I don't remember. This movie, I was locked in. I didn't even have my game on. I didn't even have it on. I had I have a desktop right here that's right, you see the light coming off. I had that off. And I just was I literally was like this. I made I think I paused it 10 minutes in. I was like, all right, let me go make food because I'm going to be locking into this movie. I'm not going to be going anywhere. So like, oh no, I went to go get Chick-fil-A. That's what I got.
Fire.
So, and then I just sat here and ate and like was like staring at the movie and like, I didn't think it was that good when I saw it when I was younger. Like I knew it was good. It was always a good movie, always a good trilogy. But I didn't think it was that good. Like I thought this movie was, if we're not being picky, probably borderline flawless. If we're not being picky, because obviously we can say any movie is not flawless. We can be picky with any movie, but like I love the plot trajectory. I love the relationship building. I love the development of Caesar. I love the development of Will in relation to Caesar. I love the development of Charles in relationship to Caesar and Will. Like all that stuff was really, really well done. And I think like it's kind of one of those things like the Dark Knight thing. Like I don't know how I'd feel if someone else was playing the Joker. Same thing. I don't know how I would feel if someone else was playing Andy Serkis was playing Caesar. Like I don't know if anyone other than Andy Serkis was playing Caesar. I don't know how I would react. I feel like I felt like that was a real ape on camera. Like I felt like it was a real ape on camera. Like obviously I had no Andy Serkis, but I had no wherewithal in the moments. Like, oh, that looks like a human. Like no, like I was like, wow, that's really well done. So like graphics get an A+ for me 100%.
And speaking to those graphics, as I said earlier, it was animated and the CGI was made by Weta. And I mean, for the first few minutes of this movie, you could kind of tell that it's a digital character. But as the movie goes on, your brain adjusts and it's full realism at that point. It takes about 15 minutes, maybe even less. And you're fully engrossed, and it doesn't even look any different than a real ape being there. As you said, all the characters are very good. I thought this movie was really well paced. It only goes for an hour and 45 minutes, including the credits. And I don't think there's a second wasted. You said this is a near flawless movie, and I fully agree with that. Similar to how I felt about the Batman trilogy, I didn't think the first movie was all that special when I first watched it. But looking back at it, I'm fully amazed by this movie. I almost cried at some points of this movie. I got goosebumps at multiple points of this movie. I put my fists at multiple points of this movie. From start to finish, this movie grabs you and holds on to you for the entire ride. And I'm so happy I got to watch this again, because this movie made me feel something, like I just said. And I think that's really the important part of a movie is, do you feel something while watching this? Whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, happiness. There are parts of this movie where I was very angry, because when they're in their cages and everything, and you have Tom Felton within the movie, he plays this really annoying, really bad caretaker of these apes. And it's also a relief when you see the apes go back at him, and the ultimate revenge that they get on him feels very rewarding and very earned at that same right, because you don't like this character the way they set him up. But this movie also talks about a lot of deeper themes, a lot of deeper impacts, just beyond that this person is raising this animal and this animal comes to rise again. And I think that's really about captivity and the state of mind. And that's something that we see with Caesar, as well as Charles, James Franco's father, played by John Lithgow. And because you get this dichotomy of Caesar's growing up, but Charles is regressing, and they're trying to essentially make it even by taking this drug. I believe it was ALZ 112, and then later on in the movie 113. And it's really interesting to see the connection between animals and humans being so strong. It's so interesting to see how captivity also ruins us to a certain extent. With the apes being in these cages, you see Caesar, who is this hyper intelligent ape, go into depression and trying to figure his way out. And that's also because his mind is so expanded. He's okay with what's happening. He's not okay with what's happening. But then you have Charles, who's okay with what's happening because he doesn't process what's happening with Alzheimer's. He doesn't realize that his mental state is going away. He doesn't realize that he is captive to this vegetable body, essentially. He's looking for his keys, but he hasn't drove in years. All this stuff. And then you see him get better, and you're like, oh, thank God. And you see Caesar getting smarter and smarter, and you're like, oh, this is really nice. and then Caesar gets taken away from Will, and you're heartbroken, and then you see Charles lose his mental capacity again, and you're like, ugh, it's just heartbreaking. And Will goes on to try to save his father by making ALZ 113, and Charles refuses it, and that's really a really tough scene to watch, because despite his mental capacity going, he knows he's about to die. He knows, listen, don't waste your effort. Go do other things. Go save Caesar.
Yeah.
And that's really an impactful scene. What are some other deeper themes that you really enjoyed within this movie?
I love that, like, and I was obviously, we write the same notes, and when we're watching it, we're logging the same notes. So looking at, when you're talking about the captivity and state of mind and the progression and the regression of Charles and the progression of Caesar, they were running parallel with each other the whole movie. Like it was pretty consistent. And I love how they made that a locked-in theme, but they didn't have to talk about it. They didn't say, hey, this is what's happening, this is a theme. They just let the plot do that. And we saw how Caesar progressed, was getting smarter, was starting to understand the things around the house, starting to know what to do when things happen. And you see Charles start to regress. And then eventually Charles starts to get better. And now him and Caesar are doing things together. They're, he's playing the piano, he's doing all that stuff, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then you see the regression start happening. You see Caesar progressing. So it's kind of like a regression. And then once they catch up, they're kind of here. And then once Caesar starts taking off, he kind of regresses again. So understanding that from a loving figure of his father, who's took care of him his whole life, to someone who he's taken care of their whole life, and just seeing the double sides being played for Will, it makes it hard to watch if you're a big James Franco fan, because you feel for that character because of the believability. But I also like the theme of intelligence, that anyone can have intelligence, anyone can grasp the concept of intelligence, but it's what you do, it's how you use that intelligence that separates you from other people. So you look at the Apes, you look at the one that's been there for a while, and Caesar comes in there. Caesar doesn't fight him. Caesar's running away. Caesar's not necessarily running away, but Caesar's trying to find a situation that's going to put him at the top. It's going to put him on edge. So he's, climbing around the tree. He's jumping from side to side. Eventually he loses, whatever, cool. But now he knows, okay, that's the guy I got to worry about, right? Like that's the guy I got to get off my tail. So then everyone else should follow me after that. And then he finds how to get out, how to get away from the, how to get, open the, I don't know what that's called.
The hatch at the top of the
hatch at the top. And then he starts plotting his plan. So that kind of, like, those type of things bode well for me, because that tells me a true, like, underdog story, especially in that sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot to do with freedom and captivity as well. So despite the attachment to Caesar, despite the attachment to Charles, you have to get rid of that attachment to do greater things. It's almost the greatest sacrifice to get what you ultimately need in life. And we see Will try to get him back. He has a court order. He has everything he needs to get him back. And Caesar says, no, I have my own plan. And he's very frustrated with Will, but we see that come to pass when he goes back into the house, gets the ALZ 113, gives it to the other apes so that they could all have the shared mind and the shared sense of intelligence. And then when James Franco goes to save him at the very end of the movie, he puts his hand out for the respect thing. And that's another very strong scene within this movie of, do you trust me that I could do this on my own? Do you trust me that I could have a better life within the woods and not with you at home? Yeah. And it's something that's really amazing to see, that if you put your mind to it, I felt like Caesar within this movie was Andy Dufresne from Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
He gave that sense of hope, not only to himself, but to the other apes. He was smart enough to come up with a plan to escape from this hell that he was in, honestly, eating food that he didn't want to eat, being in a situation where they're constantly being tortured. No one should be in that situation, and he found his way out because he was smart enough to do so.
Agreed.
To move on with everything, we've been talking about some really amazing scenes within this movie. Do you have any scenes that really stuck out to you as the top scene for you in this movie?
This is a couple scenes, I guess. It was a collection of scenes, but when Caesar, I kind of talked about, was manipulating everything in the jail, or the whatever, the refuge where he was supposed to be getting helped at, to find a way out. And he showed all the apes that there's hope. So the first thing he looked at was, okay, there's the hatch. Okay, I know I can open it. I just have to figure out a way how to get up there, how to open it. Cool. All right, I know there's a big guy in there. I saw him the first day. Big guy's probably going to help me, do what I need to do. He's going to be the brute force. So now it's a risk by Caesar. Now he's like, all right, if I let him out, he could just kill me because he could be mad. Or he could respect that I let him out and try to help me and me show him, hey, here's food. Here's what I'm trying to do. Cool, whatever. So he lets him out, comes out. Now he needs to get the rest of the people to trust him. So then he gives them cookies. He throws the ALZ-13 out, he starts showing them that, hey, listen, I know what I'm doing. Just stick with me. Everything's going to be good. They come up with a whole plan to get out. But I love the building of it because it just shows how smart Caesar really is, because he doesn't try to overpower because there's only 3 people working there. Like, and the one guy's soft, the one skinny, like, he's not doing anything. Like, you saw that at the end. He spared it, he spared him. Hey, I'm going to close this, just chilling here, bro. Like, you're good. You weren't hurting us. You weren't really doing anything bad to us. Like, no issue. But it's the whole building of that scene that kind of made it worthwhile to me, because you think of apes, what do you think? You think they're going to try, you think of overpowering, you think they're going to be animalistic, right? That's not what they did. They did it from a very eccentric and a very intelligent point of view, which I think pushed the story to a different place than what it could have been if they just kind of bum rushed them out of there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, showing mercy is showing the humanity within Caesar, and the fact that he was able to stop the other apes from destroying him, and was like, listen, the fact that he had all their trust and was like, listen, I could protect him, I could protect you guys. If you trust me, we'll get out of here and we'll do what we need to do. I think that's a really great scene. One of my favorite scenes is when we first get Apes Together Strong. He doesn't fully finish the line, but he's explaining to Maurice that if we're all doing this as an individual effort, it's not going to work. Not one person could get us out of here, but if we work together as apes, being together, we are a stronger force. We are a bigger thing than just one person trying to escape from this, because he easily could have just went on his own and not taken anybody with him. I mean, he did that going back to Will's house, and he decided, I'm going to come back and I'm going to free everybody. This is not a good place for anyone. And that just shows the leader that he is. But transitioning also in seeing everybody's eyes from the ALZ-113, everybody go green, essentially. It was really, the eyes are the window to the soul, and they kind of started that from the beginning of the movie, seeing bright eyes, seeing all these other apes start to develop their regular eyes into these green eyes. And that was all one stretch of scene, and I thought that was really amazing. Do you have any other scenes that really got to you?
Not really. I mean, the scene when Will came back to get him, like, that kind of hurt me a little bit. Like, it's like, damn, like, he really came back for him, but it doesn't matter. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Caesar's going to handle it, but I love that they showed Will coming back for him and trying to save him, because that showed, like, Caesar may not have been happy with Will, but it showed him that, hey, listen, like, he cares. Like, I still got to do this on my own, but I appreciate you caring for me, you raising me, you treat me the right way. That type of scene gets to me personally, but I like the scene.
To piggyback off of that, the scene I mentioned earlier, when everybody's free, they're in the redwoods, they survived everything that happened on the bridge, and he puts his hand out for Will, and Will says, all right, you got it. Like, this is the life you want. And then as he's walking to the tree that he's about to climb, all the other apes start doing the same thing for Caesar, to be like, if you say this is okay, I'm here with you. And again, just a very strong scene. We said this before we got on camera. This is a movie start to finish that I could have picked any scene and I could have raved over it for minutes upon end.
Explain why it was your favorite. Now I would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. This movie is amazing start to finish, and that includes some really good lines. And I believe we have the same line here. Yeah, and it's when the tide starts to change and you realize Caesar is not just an ape. He is greater than everyone around him at this point. He's getting beaten by Tom Felton. He's trying to outwit him within the fight, saying, you can't hit me and all this other stuff. And he's trying to whack him, and then catches his arm. and camera is eye level and then it booms down, and he has this power stance and everything. He is standing above him and he screams no. We hear him use words for the first time, and I got chills immediately. I'm getting chills now.
That's yeah. I'm getting
That
chills too.
scene is easily the most powerful, but I didn't put it in my favorite scene because this is a line that is up there in history with something that makes you feel something, and that's something I mentioned earlier. It chilled me to my core. That was also a fist pump scene for me. It was really amazing to see this character finally show, like, listen, I'm better than you, and you've been doing this your whole life. I've only been doing this this intelligently for the past few years. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I agree. That no, like
Immediate chills.
immediate.
So we've been raving about Caesar this entire
Yeah,
walk through this movie. We can't name him as our favorite character, even though he is. I want to go kind of behind that because he's obviously the top notch of this. Who within this movie really stuck out to you?
It would have to be Bright Eyes. And obviously I can go with a bunch of different characters, but I think she set the tone for the movie. I think understanding and initially understanding that, okay, she's super smart, super intelligent. Okay, the drug must have worked. Cool. And hey, now they're about to go through the next trials. Like, this is gonna be awesome. And then her whole attitude completely changes. Now it's like, okay, well, are they abusing these apes? Are they not treating them right? Are they doing things they shouldn't be doing? And she escapes, whatever, and then they shoot her, and she passed away. And then come to find out in the next scene, or within the next 5 minutes of the movie, 10 minutes of the movie, we find out that she had a child and she was being defensive. So, Will puts it together like, wait, she wasn't being defensive because of the drugs. She was being defensive because of the child, because she thought you were going to do something to the kid. And now that puts a whole different perspective, one, on the drug to Will. That changes Will's perspective on the drug. Because at first, think about if that happens, he's like, oh, man, I guess it didn't work again. Like, I tried, but that wasn't the reason. Two, it gives us a different perspective on the apes as a whole. It makes us feel for the apes. It doesn't necessarily make us think that apes are animals, in the context of this movie. It's like, wow, that was like something human of her. Like, she must, like, that's really, really good. So now that establishes a culture for Caesar, that I'm just all over the place. Now that also establishes a culture for Caesar too throughout the movie, because now you see his humanity come through in different phases of the movie. Whether he's sparing the guy's life, whether he's asking Will for permission, because that's his father, for the guy that raised him his whole life. So doing all those little things started from that very first scene with the mother. So she's one of my favorites for the effect on the movie, not necessarily for how meaningful she was in the scene she was in, but for the rest of the movie, she definitely.
She was the domino that led to everything else that happened within this movie. And a point that you brought up now and a point that you brought up earlier was show, don't tell. This movie does a really good job of not telling you what's happening. It's showing you what's happening. And that just shows the really strong writing within this movie. For my favorite character, it was really a split between two people not named Caesar. The honorable mention from this movie is Koba, because it's Caesar that was tortured, and he's just as smart and all this other stuff, but we kind of see more going into that with the second movie, and we'll go into that when it comes. But Charles was really my other favorite character within this movie, played by John Lithgow, and it's because there's that juxtaposition between him and Caesar and their progression and regression together of a similar story, and the way that Will handles both of them. There's a lot of good scenes of him playing piano for the first time and since being better. And you really see, even when he regresses and Caesar attacks the neighbor, he still understands what's going on and he wants to protect Caesar. He knows him doing that to the neighbor will make Caesar go away. And he doesn't want that, both for himself, for Will, for Caesar. He doesn't want him to go into animal control because he knows what could happen to him. And that's while he's being regressed. That's while he is in this vegetative state. And for the first half of this movie, he really is the thing that you latch on to for both Caesar, for Will. He is that thing that really just tears your heart apart throughout this movie.
Yeah, he's the constant.
Yeah,
He's there. I agree. He's like same thing. You can say same thing with Caesar. Him and Caesar are kind of just on the same projections. Just they just end up going in different directions.
for sure. And before we end this, do you want to have any final thoughts, or should I just transition into the end of this?
Yeah, I mean the movie was good. I'm really excited to rewatch the second and third ones. When we do these movies, I don't necessarily like the movies that we watched. I don't haven't watched as frequently recently, so it's good to kind of have a fresh mind and restart each of these trilogies to kind of like feel how it felt when I first watched the movie. If we
Yeah.
watched, if I just binged it and watched all three in the same day, it wouldn't have that same feeling. But going week by week and like taking some time off, having to think about some scenes, talking to Tommy and figuring out like I like it. So I don't really have any final thoughts in this movie. I'm just kind of I'll have a lot of final thoughts at the end of the trilogy.
Yeah.
End of the trilogy episode will probably be a little bit longer, just so you guys know. But just like it was with the Batman one. But I'm excited. I'm excited about the next movie.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. As I mentioned earlier, the second movie, in my opinion, was my favorite movie going into this rewatch. And I'm excited to see if it really holds up that way. I know I'm still going to love it. It's how does it compare to the first? And will I pick up anything new? I mean, I've only watched that movie once. So there's a lot that I could take notes during and find something new and hopefully share it with you guys. And for that, we're going to go into Dawn of the Planet of the Apes with our next movie. If you could like and subscribe this, I'd very much appreciate that. We're happy to be back. We're happy to be doing these reviews again. And with the polls that I did on Instagram, we're going to be trying to get some of those movies that you mentioned out there so that we could have a nice conversation, not just do movies that we've been talking about recently, but do the movies that you want to talk about as well. X, thank you so much for doing this. And guys, we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.